It would appear the sun has set on yet another corner of the British Empire, this one far down in the South Atlantic. Argentina today invaded and seized the Falkland Islands, which have been under British rule for nearly 150 years. Britain promptly broke diplomatic relations with Argentina, sent several of Her Majesty's warships steaming south, and appealed to the United Nations. It all seems like something out of the 18th century, but the British, and for that matter the Americans, are not amused.
Everybody was very, very low in spirits. Obviously, we didn't know whether we were going to be shot or what was going to happen, taken back to Argentina. Everybody knew of the regime over there, the military government, what they'd done to their own people. They knew they wanted the Falklands, and our future, well, we didn't know our future.
Even an unpopular dictatorship would be acclaimed if it could recover the Malvinas. When news of the invasion reached Buenos Aires, the crowds went wild. The military regime's record of violent repression, the economic crisis, all were forgotten overnight. The national dream of reoccupying the Malvinas had been realized.
The confrontation between Britain and Argentina over the Falkland Islands is escalating quickly. Here is how and why. Argentina is beefing up the invasion force that last Friday captured the islands. A 40-ship British armada, primed for possible war, set sail for the Falklands.
I must tell the House that the Falkland Islands and their dependencies remain British territory. No aggression and no invasion can alter that simple fact. It is a government's objective to see that the islands are freed from occupation and are returned to British administration at the earliest possible moment.
Commander Sharkey Ward, one of Britain's best-known fighter pilots following World War II. Test pilot, war hero, and RAF critic. Hello, and welcome to the series Battle Paintings. My name is Jack, and I will be covering the painting Airstrike over West Falklands by Robert Taylor. In this video, I will cover the events surrounding the painting, featuring Sharkey Ward and his wingman Stephen Thomas's dogfight against 3 Argentinian Dagger aircraft. And I will also be covering the artist Robert Taylor. Thank you very much for watching. As a bit of disclosure, being British, my opinion surrounding the conflict is rather biased, but for the purpose of this video, I will not be discussing the political aspect or the sovereignty of the islands, and I want to really focus on the painting itself, the events, the aircraft, and all of the pilots who flew in this engagement. Thank you very much. As part of my research for this video, I've relied quite heavily on Sharkey Ward's book, Sea Harrier over Falklands, displayed on your screen. I would very much recommend anyone to pick up this book at their local bookstore. In it, it's got a fantastic account from a pilot's point of view from the events all leading up to the war, his career before the war had started, such as his testing off the Sea Harrier. And it also includes some quite fantastic diagrams of the actions that took place and the actions that are going to be explained and described in this video. The 2nd of April 1982, Argentine forces land on the Falkland Islands. They quickly overpower the small garrison of Royal Marines at Port Stanley. On April 5th, the British Naval Task Force, including the carriers HMS Hermes and HMS Invincible, depart from Portsmouth and Devonport. The fleet would later consist of 127 ships, including 43 Royal Navy ships, 22 Royal Fleet Auxiliary ships, and 62 merchant ships. On board the carriers, HMS Hermes has 16 Sea Harriers of 800 and 809 Squadron. They also have the support from 8 RAF GR3 from RAF No. 1 Squadron. On board HMS Invincible, they have 12 Sea Harriers of 801 and 809 Squadrons. 801 Squadron will be the topic of this video under the command of Lieutenant Commander Sharkey Ward. April 12th, Britain has declared a 200-mile maritime exclusion zone around the Falklands, warning that any Argentine ships entering the area will be targeted. On April 25th, Operation Paraquet is launched, with British SAS and SBS troops, supported by Royal Marines, successfully recapture the territory of South Georgia. Argentine submarine ARA Santa Fe was spotted trying to reinforce South Georgia. A Wessex helicopter from HMS Antrim dropped depth charges crippling the submarine. Follow-up attacks were made by a Lynx helicopter from HMS Brilliant using a torpedo and machine gun fire, and a Wasp helicopter from HMS Plymouth. The details of Operation Paraquet are captured quite well in the book South Georgia Boating Club by Tony Shaw. I have just finished reading this book in the last week, and he is an SAS trooper who previously served with the Royal Signals, and it's a very interesting book with lots of quite good anecdotes and other stories from the Falklands, Northern Ireland, events leading up to it, his training, and yeah, it's a very good recommended read. May the 1st, Operation Black Buck, an RAF Falcon bomber has completed an 8,000-mile round trip from Ascension Island to bomb the runway at Port Stanley. This has signalled to the Argentine forces that Britain could strike the islands directly. In the book, Sea Harry over Falklands, Sharkey Ward does share quite a opinionated view of this raid, but I would let you read that for yourselves. May the 2nd, the sinking of ARA General Belgrano. While sailing south around the total exclusion zone, ARA General Belgrano is sunk by 2 out of 3 torpedoes fired from HMS Conqueror. This leads to a heavy loss of life, with 323 Argentine sailors perishing in this attack. The Belgrano, formerly the USS Phoenix, was a highly decorated US Navy ship that served during the Pacific Theatre of World War II, and was at the attack of Pearl Harbor in 1942. In 1951, it was purchased by the Argentine Navy. May the 4th, the sinking of HMS Sheffield. An Argentine Superintendar aircraft fires an Exocet missile at the British Type 42 destroyer. The ship is mortally damaged, making it the first Royal Navy ship lost in action since World War II. 20 crew members are killed. May the 14th, the Pebble Island raid. With the need to reduce Argentine air capabilities, the SAS launch a night raid on the airfield of Pebble Island. This has destroyed 11 Argentine aircraft, fuel and ammunition depots, reducing the Argentine ground attack capabilities for the upcoming British landings. May 21st, 1982, D-Day. This day marked the landings by the British forces at San Carlos Water. 3 Commando Brigade, consisting of 40 Commando, 4-2 Commando, and 4-5 Commando of the Royal Marines. Also, the Parachute Regiment, with 2 and 3 Para, supported by the SBS, 29 Commando Regiment Royal Artillery, the Royal Engineers, and the Commando Logistics Regiment. Whilst the landings were unopposed, they would soon face heavy attacks from the brave pilots of the Argentine Air Force and Navy. 10:15 a.m. Before jets from the mainland could arrive, a distance of some 300 miles, a single-seater light attack aircraft took off from Port Stanley. It was sent to reconnoitre the bay. The Aramaki MB-339 was flown by Lieutenant Owen Cripper. He flew directly into the middle of the British fleet and attacked the frigate HMS Argonaut with unguided rockets and strafed it with cannon fire, causing light damage to its radar before escaping back to Stanley. I've managed to find quite an interesting account of this event during my research. Tim Court, a sailor aboard HMS Argonaut, saved his life by mere seconds, being able to seek shelter from the rockets and cannon fire a few metres from where he was located. After the attack, and a few hours after his watch ended, Court went to the Air Engineering Office and made a drawing of the attack he had witnessed. In 2022, Lieutenant Cripper was presented with this drawing. What speaks to the impact of this attack by Lieutenant Cripper is how heavily mentioned it is in a lot of accounts and sources by men who were in St. Carlos that day. My former colleague, Adam Smith of 4-5 Commando, RIP, told me about this last time I saw him while working with him in the summer. An acquaintance of mine, Brian Short, aboard the Canberra, recalls the attack from the flight deck of the Canberra. Brian mentions this in his book, The Band That Went to War. Brian was a Royal Marines bandsman, and he's written a book about his accounts of the war. I would highly recommend checking it out. As well as this, in many other books I'm sure a lot of people have read, such as The Yompers by Ian Gardner. It mentions how when they were on the hills above San Carlos, Lieutenant Cripper's jet soared right past them over the ridgeline before going on to attack the Argonaut. 10:30. The first jets from the mainland bases have arrived, working at the absolute limit of their fuel range. These supersonic fighter bombers are the first heavy aircraft to arrive. They consisted of 8 Daggers, Israeli-built copies of the Mirage 5 in 2 flights. The Nandu flight attacked HMS Antrim, striking her with a 1,000-pound bomb that failed to detonate. It lodged into the aft Sea Slug magazine, causing heavy structural damage. 1 Dagger was shot down by a Seacat missile from Antrim. The Perro flight attacked HMS Brilliant and HMS Broadsword, peppering both with 30mm cannon fire, wounding several sailors. Throughout the rest of the day, the courageous Argentinian pilots would press their attack, causing much damage to the British fleet. HMS Ardent, a Type 21 frigate, faced heavy attacks from the Argentinian Daggers and A4 Skyhawks. She was ordered to abandon ship and she burnt through most of the night before sinking the following morning. Despite these losses to the British task force, the landings were successful, allowing the ground offensive to begin. By the end of the day, at least 15 Argentine aircraft had been destroyed by British Sea Harriers and anti-aircraft fire. This resulted in the deaths of approximately 14 to 15 Argentine pilots and crew, though the number of pilots were successfully rescued by Argentine forces after ejecting. The British losses, with HMS Ardent, 22 sailors killed and many more wounded. HMS Argonaut faced 2 Royal Navy sailors killed, and the Royal Marines Commando Brigade Air Squadron, with 3 members killed near Port San Carlos when 2 British Gazelle helicopters were shot down by Argentine small arms fire. On the morning of May 21st, Sharkey Ward and wingmen Lieutenant Commander Steve Thomas and Lieutenant Commander Alistair Craig are in Cap, close air patrol, to the southwest of San Carlos. After an initially quiet patrol, they climbed out to 10,000 feet when HMS Antrim's controller came on the air. Side note, I've found differing accounts whether it was HMS Antrim or HMS Brilliant, but I will source Sharkey Ward's biography for this. The controller stated, "I have 2 slow-moving contacts to the land south of you, possibly helicopters or ground attack aircraft. Do you wish to investigate?" As soon as the controller said south, Sharkey Ward and his wingmen rolled hard to starboard. Steve spotted them first. "Got them, Sharkey. 2 Picaras on the deck." The 3 Harriers went in for the attack. Craig and Thomas failed to make a hit on the first, but Sharkey attacked from 6 o'clock on the second Picara. With his 2 30mm Aden cannons, the shells impacted the aircraft. The pilot of the Picara, Major Carlos Tomba, had not given up. With his left engine aflame, he kept trying to evade the Harriers, but on the 3rd attack, the Picara was doomed. Major Tomba had ejected at the last second. He was able to walk back to friendly troops at Goose Green. On his second sortie of the day, flying as a pair with Steve Thomas, they faced no action, but could see HMS Ardent limping northwards, billowing smoke. On their final sortie of the day, they were in Cap, overland to the west of San Carlos. When turning at the end of their racetrack pattern, Sharkey spotted them. 2 Mirages. Head on to me now, Steve. 1 mile. Sharkey passed between the 2 Daggers. He pulled hard right. They had not noticed Steve. It had placed him on their 6 o'clock. They had aborted their attack and were running for home. Steve's first missile streaked from out under his wing, leaving a trail of white smoke. The Dagger pilot had jettisoned his canopy before the missile had struck. When it did, he ejected. Sharkey was checking the skies around him, making sure his wingman wasn't being tailed. Steve was busy tracking the second jet. He released his missile. It chased the Dagger up into the clouds before detonating. Sharkey, glancing over to his right, saw the 3rd, unknown Dagger fly beneath him. He broke right and down, locking onto the jet's exhaust with his sidewinder. He released the missile, and seconds later the Dagger disappeared into a ball of flame. The 3 Argentine pilots, Captain Donadil, First Lieutenant Sen, and Major Pioma, all managed to eject from their aircraft and survived the war. I believe it is Major Pioma who flew the Argentine Dagger C404. The wreck site of this Dagger can still be found on the Falklands and is quite a major tourist location. But this sortie was the final sortie of the day for both pilots, and this was the final engagement that they saw in this sortie. While following this, they did establish contact with HMS Brilliant, the air control ship, but they had just come under attack and were able to report that there was 4, I believe, Argentine Navy Skyhawks attacking HMS Ardent as it was limping northwards. With this, due to the low fuel, the low ammunition from their prior dogfight or ACM, air combat maneuvering, they contacted a flight sortie from HMS Hermes. Now, with this, the pilots of HMS Hermes were able to destroy, I believe it was 3 of the 4 aircraft, but one of them was able to drop its bombs onto Ardent, kind of, I wouldn't say finishing off the ship. The ship was in pretty dire condition at that point, but it was another nail in the coffin for HMS Ardent. But with this painting depicts the action and the attack from Sharkey Ward on his dogfight, on his attack of Major Pioma. With it, you can see they're flying over West Falkland. It's fairly low level, and he has just fired off one of his Sidewinder missiles. So this painting is very, very well detailed from a technical perspective of aircraft. Robert Taylor, the artist, is pretty world renowned for his intricate details and accuracy when it comes to military aircraft. That's why, with him, he's probably one of the most famous aviation painters there have been, especially for the 20th and 21st century. With this painting in particular, I believe the original is actually on display at Yeovilton, the Fleet Air Arm Museum, which luckily for me is only a short drive away. And I believe it is the original, but I have seen it quite a few times. I mean, normally if you go to any air show, there is Riat Yeovilton Air Show when they used to host it, you would always see the stores selling these and selling this painting. I actually really want it on my wall. Currently, I've just got lots of Lancaster's Spitfires and a Swordfish, because Swordfish is one of my favourite beers as well. But yes, I mean, the detail you could go on for days with his work. What I will do, though, is put a link in the description for where you could purchase this painting. I believe they are still selling the paintings that are signed by Robert Taylor and signed by Sharkey Ward as well, as a bit of a commemorative edition, which will soon run out. So I need to really log onto the computer and purchase one of these, because I would quite like it on my wall. Maybe my wife will not enjoy another painting, but hey ho, that's how it goes. But with this, just some details onto the aircraft themselves. This aircraft that is flown, I believe it is Harrier ZA-175. This is now located at Duxford Imperial War Museum, and you can go see it for yourself there. It's been there a couple of years now, but it is truly a historic aircraft. With some of the other engagements I've spoken about, such as his attack on the Pucara with XZ-451. Unfortunately, that aircraft was lost in a training accident in the Mediterranean, but you can go still see one of Sharkey Ward's aircraft for yourself at Duxford. While I would have wanted this video to end on a more upbeat note about the brave and courageous men who fought for both Britain and Argentina, as well as the Falkland Islanders themselves, I thought it would be more appropriate to mention the tragic event that happened earlier this week while making this video. A Merlin from 845 Naval Air Squadron for the Fleet Air Arm, call sign Sword 1, crashed during training exercises in Devon, killing all 3 crew aboard. I wish to pay tribute to all of the crew and their families in this tragic time. Lieutenant Commander Chris Grayson, 42, Lieutenant Lily Mae Fisher, 31, and Petty Officer Owen Green, 24 years old. Thank you very much for watching.